Courtrooms have rules for a reason. When you're standing in front of a judge, most people, even the ones facing serious charges, understand the assignment. Stay calm, say what you need to say, and do not make things worse. But some people walk in like none of that applies to them. From kids who smirked at grieving families while facing murder charges, to a defendant who literally jumped over a table trying to escape a judge. Penelopey Sto.
That would be 10,000.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Adios.
At 18 years old, the charge was relatively straightforward, 26 counts of Xanax possession, and the hearing was just meant to determine her bail. Police had arrested her the night before after she told officers she had crashed her bicycle while high on Xanax. So by the time she appeared before Miami-Dade Circuit Judge Jorge Rodriguez Chomat in an orange jumpsuit the next morning, she was clearly still not in the right headspace. She laughed throughout the proceeding and kept playing with her hair. When the judge asked about the value of her jewelry to assess her finances for bail, she responded with a giggle. He told her to take it seriously. He set her bond at $5,000, said bye-bye, and moved on. That should have been the end of it. But she made a comment under her breath on her way out, so the judge called her back and raised the bond to $10,000. She asked if he was serious. He responded with adios, so she turned around, gave him the middle finger with full commitment, and directed an expletive at him that cannot be repeated here. He cited her for contempt right there and added 30 days in jail on the spot. A few days later, she returned to court in tears and told the judge she had been under the influence of both Xanax and alcohol during the first hearing. He accepted it, dropped the contempt charge, and vacated the sentence. She enrolled in a drug court program after that, passed 8 consecutive drug tests, attended all her required counseling sessions, and completed the full program. A different judge told her at her final appearance that she was finally smiling, something they had not seen from her before. The original possession charges were dismissed. Jesus Ayala and Nehemiah Keys. It started as a home burglary. On the 14th of August, 2023, 2 teenagers broke into an elderly woman's residence in northwest Las Vegas, stole her car, and took it on a crime spree through the Centennial Hills area. Keys sat in the passenger seat filming on his phone while Ayala drove. They struck one cyclist first, old man who survived. Then they came up behind Andreas Probst, a retired police chief from Bell, California, who was out on an early morning bike ride. The footage Keys recorded captured voices calling for Ayala to hit Probst before the car swerved and plowed directly into him from behind. Probst did not survive. The stolen vehicle was found abandoned roughly 10 minutes from the scene. Weeks later, a high school student in Las Vegas recognized footage that had been circulating on social media and reported it to a school resource officer. That tip connected the 2 teens to the crime. On the day of Ayala's arrest, police body camera footage recorded him telling officers the whole thing was just a hit and run, a slap on the wrist, and that he expected to be out in 30 days. He was 17 at the time of the killing. Keys was 16. At a court hearing in October 2023, both teens were caught smirking, whispering, and laughing while Probst's family sat in the gallery. Both pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in October 2025. Ayala was sentenced to 20 years to life, and Keys received 18 years to life. Under Nevada law, both are eligible for parole consideration in the mid-2040s because they committed the crime as juveniles. William Demopoulos.
As quickly as Demopoulos hops over the table, the deputy...
He was 18 years old and appearing in a Berea, Ohio courtroom in October 2014 for a probation violation hearing. His prior charges included criminal damaging, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and obstructing official business. The hearing was meant to determine what happened next. The judge asked him to hand over his phone. He refused, telling the judge he did not see any reason for them to take it. The judge asked what was on the phone he did not want them to find. He said nothing, and then tried to walk out. The judge told him to stand there and act like a man. If he did not hand over the phone, he was going to jail that day. He screamed that he couldn't do it, jumped up onto a table, and threw himself toward the courtroom door. Deputies tackled him before he got anywhere near it. Multiple officers had to physically bring him down while he was still fighting, and the judge at the bench was adding days to his sentence out loud in real time. 30 days on top of the existing 30. Then came the suggestion that 90 was on the table if it continued. His probation was revoked on the spot. Berea police also charged him with resisting arrest for the courtroom outburst itself. His father later told local news that his son had been diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder and had not taken his medication in the days leading up to the hearing. That was the family's explanation, but it did not change what was decided. Enrique Martin Ayala
faces charges of assault, aggravated robbery, and resisting arrest.
On the evening of the 3rd of December 2024, San Juan police in Texas responded to a domestic disturbance on Cancun Lane. His own mother had made the call. She told officers that her son had pushed her after she found and destroyed a stash of narcotics in his possession, and she wanted to file charges against him. Then she left for work because she was too scared to stay. When officers arrived and tried to place him under arrest at the front door, he slipped out of their grip, grabbed a kitchen knife from somewhere within reach, and started swinging. Officer Matthew Martinez was stabbed in the chin, neck, and left ear. Officer Anthony Meza was stabbed in the left shoulder blade. Officer Anthony Soto was stabbed in the upper torso area below the armpit. All three were rushed to the hospital. Officers tried to deploy a taser, but it was unsuccessful. He escaped through a bedroom window and fled on foot. A search involving multiple agencies located him approximately a quarter-mile away, hiding beside a house. He was 18 years old. Earlier that same day, he had also attempted to carjack a separate vehicle while armed with a different knife, approaching a man who had his child in the car with him. He was arraigned the following day on 3 counts of attempted capital murder of a peace officer, along with aggravated robbery and resisting arrest. His bond was set at $3,255,000. During the arraignment, he walked into the courtroom smiling and shouting expletives at the gallery, then entered a no-contest plea to the charges. 2 of the 3 officers were released from the hospital within days. The third remained in stable condition. Maurice Thomas and Dontavius Butler. Maurice Thomas and Dontavius Butler stole a car and led police on one of the messier chases the county had seen that year. Maurice Thomas was behind the wheel of a stolen Hyundai Sonata out of Lighthouse Point. The group, which included Dontavius Butler and 2 others, drove in and out of Interstate 95 and cut through residential neighborhoods in Oakland Park before abandoning the still-moving vehicle in a Lauderdale Lakes parking lot and running on foot. 2 of them jumped into a second vehicle that had been left there in advance. That one was also stolen. Deputies set up a perimeter and eventually arrested all 4. Police confirmed the group was already wanted for additional crimes in Broward, Palm Beach, and Martin counties. The charges included burglary, grand theft auto, and fleeing and eluding police. The police chase had been filmed, and local news aired the footage of the run through residential streets before the car was abandoned mid-drive. All 4 appeared in Broward County Juvenile Court the following day. When the judge ordered Maurice Thomas to serve 21 days in detention, he became visibly upset. That reaction immediately set off his supporters in the gallery, who broke into yelling, dancing in the aisle, and screaming at a guard. Dontavius Butler, meanwhile, turned to the news cameras in the room and flashed 2 rows of gold teeth. The judge sentenced several disruptive gallery members to 2 days in jail for contempt of court. Thomas and Butler were both sentenced to 21 days in juvenile detention. Leth Smith. He was 15 years old in February 2015 when he and 4 friends were caught breaking into homes in Millbrook, Alabama. During the confrontation with responding officers, one of his friends, Adont Washington, pulled a gun and charged at an officer. The officer shot and killed Washington. Smith was not armed and did not fire at anyone. But, under Alabama's felony murder rule, all of the suspects involved in the underlying burglaries were charged with Washington's death because the killing occurred during the commission of a felony. 3 of his co-defendants took plea deals. Smith rejected a 2-5-year offer and went to trial instead. An Elmore County jury convicted him of felony murder, armed burglary, and 2 counts of theft in March 2018. He was tried as an adult. At sentencing in April 2018, Judge Sibley Reynolds overheard Smith mutter under his breath that he did not have time for this while waiting to be called. Reynolds addressed it directly from the bench, telling him he had plenty of time. Smith laughed and lowered his head, saying he had not realized the judge could hear him. Reynolds then stated for the record that Smith had shown no remorse at any point during the entire trial and had not once taken the opportunity to apologize. Smith was 19 at the sentencing. The sentence came back as 65 years total, 30 for murder, 15 for burglary, and 10 each for the 2 theft counts, all to run consecutively. An appeals court later adjusted one of the theft counts to run concurrently, reducing the sentence to 55 years. In 2023, after a re-sentencing hearing where Smith expressed genuine remorse, the judge reduced the sentence to 30 years, including time already served. Ethan Crumbley.
Oh. You alright? Here. You alright?
On the 30th of November 2021, he walked out of a hallway at Oxford High School in Michigan and opened fire on his classmates. He was 15 years old. The gun he brought was a semi-automatic pistol his parents had purchased for him less than a week before the shooting and had not secured in a locked container at home. He shot and killed 4 students: Madison Baldwin, 17, Tate Meyer, 16, Hannah Staint, Juliana, 14, and Justin Schilling, 17. 6 more students and a teacher were also wounded. In the weeks before the attack, a teacher caught him drawing violent images in class, including a bullet, a bleeding figure, and text describing violent thoughts. His parents were called to the school the very morning of the shooting. School officials chose to send him back to class anyway. In October 2022, he pleaded guilty to all 24 charges without a plea deal, including 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of terrorism causing death, which is a rare conviction in a Michigan state court. At his sentencing hearing in December 2023, more than 24 survivors, parents of those killed, and injured students gave statements for hours before the judge spoke. Before the sentence was read, he stood and told the court he was a really bad person, that he had done terrible things, and that nothing would have stopped him. He showed no visible reaction when the sentence was handed down. Judge Kwame Rowe sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, describing the attack as a true act of terrorism. His parents, James and Jennifer Crumbley, were both later convicted of involuntary manslaughter in separate trials. Brian Kohi II.
Begin tonight at the Mesa County Justice Center, where 21-year-old Brian Kohi Jr. is on trial for a murder that happened nearly 2 years ago.
For about 6 months, he had been thinking about killing someone. He was 19 years old and living with his parents in Grand Junction, Colorado. He told investigators he had specifically targeted homeless individuals because he believed their disappearance would go unnoticed. So he spent weeks driving around at night, surveilling encampments and looking for the right person. On the night of the 27th of February 2021, he came across Warren Barnes sleeping under a highway overpass on Highway 340. Barnes was a familiar and well-liked figure in downtown Grand Junction, a quiet, gentle man who spent most of his days reading outside a local bridal shop. Business owners in the area called him the Reading Man and would regularly bring him books and food. Kohi came prepared with 3 layers of gloves and a 1-2-inch kitchen knife. He stabbed Barnes to death, then dismembered the body. He took the head and hands home in plastic bags and hid them in his bedroom closet, then drove back to the scene to collect the remaining remains and dispose of them in the Colorado River. On the 1st of March 2021, his parents found what was in the closet and called 911. When officers arrived, Kohi walked outside and confessed immediately. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. A Mesa County jury rejected that defense after a 2-week trial in February 2023 and found him guilty of first-degree murder and 3 counts of evidence tampering. At sentencing, his mother stood at the podium, sobbing and shaking, as she described a son who had struggled his entire life. Kohi sat completely stone-faced through every word and said nothing. He received life in prison without parole, plus 13.5 years for the tampering counts. Carly Gregg.
Testimony of this friend is that he was so worried about Carly's use of smoking marijuana and so worried about her being high.
On the 19th of March 2024, in Brandon, Mississippi, shot and killed her mother. Earlier that afternoon, a classmate had told Ashley Smiley, a high school math teacher, that Gregg had been hiding cannabis in her bedroom. When Smiley searched and found it, along with e-cigarettes and burner phones, things escalated quickly. Surveillance cameras inside the family's home captured what followed. The footage shows Gregg walking through the house with a gun held behind her back, pacing. Then, the sound of gunshots. She returns to the kitchen afterward, texting and playing with the family's dogs. She had shot Ashley in the neck, Ashley did not survive. After the shooting, Greg texted a friend, asked if she had ever seen a dead body, and showed her Ashley's body when she arrived. Then Greg texted her stepfather, Heath Smiley, and asked him to come home. When he walked in, she shot at him with the same .357 Magnum that had belonged to Ashley. He managed to wrestle the gun away from her, surviving with a graze wound to the shoulder. Greg was found about half a mile from the home and taken into custody. She was tried as an adult. She turned down a plea deal that would have capped her sentence at 40 years and went to trial instead. On the 20th of September, 2024, a Rankin County jury convicted her on all counts. After 2 hours of deliberation, Greg was visibly crying as the verdict was read. An appeal has since been filed. Colin Griffith.
Although at this point you are at liberty to speak to anyone you would like to about this case, including your deliberations, you are equally free to refuse to do so. A request may come from those who are simply curious, perhaps from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you individually to determine whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. On behalf of the entire 10th Circuit and all assembled here, I humbly thank you for your service.
By the time he stood trial for killing his mother, it was not the first time he had been in that position. In February 2023, at 15 years old and living on a farm in Oklahoma, he shot and killed his father, Charles Griffith, claiming self-defense. He said his father had pulled a knife on him. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Office charged him with first-degree murder, but the charges were dropped within a month after the self-defense claim held up. He went to live with his mother, Catherine, in southwest Florida. The relationship deteriorated quickly. In November 2023, he was arrested for domestic battery against her. On the way home from jail, he told deputies he kept having thoughts of killing her, describing exactly what he imagined doing to her. He said he was in a constant state of fight or flight and was not sure what he might do. On the 8th of September 2024, he ran away from home to his grandmother's house in Auburndale, Polk County, after an argument about chores. Catherine drove there to bring him back. Witnesses saw them arguing outside before he grabbed her by the hair and dragged her into the house. Hours later, he called 911 and said she had fallen on a knife. The medical examiner found a deep stab wound through her neck. She was 39 years old. During the trial, when the prosecution went to play the 911 recording of his mother dying, he asked the judge to excuse him from the courtroom so he would not have to listen to it. A jury acquitted him of first-degree murder in February 2025 after 11 hours of deliberation. He walked out free. Nicholas Lindsay.
Following the trial of a teen accused of killing a St. Petersburg police officer.
Nicholas Lindsay had a prior juvenile record for burglary and auto theft and was carrying a semi-automatic handgun he had bought off the street for $140 when he broke into a parked white Dodge Neon near 2nd Avenue South in downtown St. Petersburg, Florida, on the night of the 21st of February, 2011. He was using a screwdriver to try to start the car when a neighbor noticed. Officer David Crawford, 46, responded. Crawford was a veteran of the St. Petersburg Police Department, worked additional security shifts at Tropicana Field, and was known by colleagues as a gruff but dependable presence on the midnight shift. He approached Lindsay holding nothing but a notebook. Lindsay shot him 5 times. Crawford died from his injuries. The killing came 28 days after 2 other St. Petersburg officers, Sergeant Tom Batinger and Officer Jeffrey Yaslowitz, had been shot and killed in the line of duty, making it a period of almost unbearable loss for the department. At trial in 2012, Lindsay was 17. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder after 3 days of testimony. Crawford's widow, Donna, sat directly across from him throughout and described him afterward as completely blank, never once changing expression. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Due to shifting Supreme Court standards on juvenile sentencing, the case went through multiple resentencing hearings over the following years. Each time, the judge reviewed the record and reached the same conclusion. Crawford's daughter, Amanda, noted at one of those hearings that Lindsay sat there smiling as the judge read the sentence back to him. The life sentence has been upheld every time, most recently in 2019. David Moses.
David Moses, sentenced as a teenager to life in prison for killing an 81-year-old woman, has been resentenced to life without parole. Moses, who was 17 at the time,
3 teenagers in Bakersfield, California, spent an April afternoon in 2010 knocking on doors through a residential neighborhood. The method is a common one used in burglaries: knock, and if no one answers, move in. On April 14, David Moses, Katila Nash entered the home of Dorothy Session through an unlocked back door on Camino Sierra. The third member of the group, 17-year-old Angelique Nash, stayed outside as a lookout. Session was home. What followed was a brutal attack. Session was confronted in one room and then dragged to another, where she was beaten repeatedly. The autopsy documented a broken nose, bruising over both eyes, cuts to her nose and mouth, and missing teeth. The force applied against her was far beyond what a frail elderly woman could have survived. Nothing in the house was taken. She was transported to Kern Medical Center that evening and died from her injuries. Moses was tried as an adult on first-degree murder charges. His co-defendants were also charged under the state's felony murder rule. Katila Nash was convicted. Angelique Nash's first trial ended in a mistrial. At trial in 2012, observers reported Moses laughing and whispering to co-defendants while the prosecution presented evidence of the attack. He was also reported to have fallen asleep at the defense table during his own murder trial. Moses was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The sentence was appealed and reviewed multiple times, with an appellate court affirming it as recently as 2022. Alyssa Bustamante.
Why did you dig that hole? Because
She had been planning this for days. Alyssa Bustamante was 15 years old and living in St. Martins, Missouri, when she dug 2 shallow graves in the woods behind the neighborhood she shared with 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton, who lived 4 houses away. On the evening of the 21st of October 2009, Bustamante sent her younger sister to invite Elizabeth outside to play. She then led Elizabeth away from her sister and into the woods, where she strangled her, sliced her throat, and stabbed her multiple times in the chest. She covered the body with leaves and went home. That same night, she wrote in her diary that it was amazing, and that once you pushed past the initial hesitation, it felt pretty enjoyable. She added at the end that she had to go to church, and signed off with a laugh. She went to church. For weeks after Elizabeth was reported missing, Bustamante participated in the community search and suggested to investigators that the girl had probably been kidnapped. FBI agents later found the diary during a search of her bedroom. She had attempted to scratch out the entry with blue ink, but the words remained visible beneath it. A handwriting expert at her sentencing hearing read the full entry aloud in open court. Just before her trial began in January 2012, Bustamante pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action, avoiding a first-degree charge that would have carried a mandatory life sentence without parole. She was sentenced in February 2012 to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus a consecutive 30-year term. She was denied parole at her first hearing on the afternoon of the 16th of July 2011. He took 3 ecstasy pills, hid his parents' phones, and locked their dog in a closet. Then he stood behind his mother as she worked on her computer and attacked her with a claw hammer, delivering 36 blows. His father rushed out when he heard the screaming and asked what was happening. Tyler's response before attacking him with the same hammer was a dismissive, profane remark that has been widely documented in coverage of the case. He spent 3 hours cleaning up blood and piling furniture and household objects over the bodies in the master bedroom. Then he charged drinks and supplies to his parents' credit cards and threw the party. Between 40 and 60 people showed up. His friend Michael Mandel was among them. Tyler told him during the party what he had done. Mandel eventually called the police, and Hadley was arrested the next morning. While waiting in jail for sentencing, he signed autographs for fellow inmates, scrawled the words "It's Hammer Time" across news articles about the murders, and started calling himself Hammer Boy. He pleaded no contest to 2 counts of first-degree murder with a weapon in 2014. He was sentenced to life in prison, and following a legal challenge under Miller v. Alabama, was resentenced to life in December 2018, with a mandated review after 25 years. Nehemiah Griego.
We heard the jail calls and the police interviews, but tonight we hear Nehemiah Griego in court for the first time.
Action 7 News reporter Justin Matthews was inside the courtroom. He joins us live to show us how Griego addressed his family. New on 7.
He had been planning what he was going to do after. On the night of the 19th of January 2013, Nehemiah Griego was home in the South Valley area, southwest of Albuquerque, New Mexico, while his father worked a volunteer overnight shift at a local homeless shelter. He took a .22 rifle stored in his parents' closet and shot his mother, Sarah Griego, 40, as she slept. When his 9-year-old brother Zephaniah woke up and said he did not believe it, Griego showed him the body. He then shot Zephaniah. He went to the rooms of 5-year-old Jael and 2-year-old Angelina and shot both of them in their beds. Then he loaded an AR-15 type semi-automatic rifle and waited for his father, Greg Griego, 51, a former gang member turned pastor and city chaplain, to come home from his shift. His father arrived around 5 a.m. and was ambushed at the door. Griego had texted a photo of his mother's body to his 1-2-year-old girlfriend and spent much of the following day with her. He told her he had planned to drive to a nearby Walmart and shoot strangers until police killed him. That evening, he drove to his family's church. The pastor and a church member drove him toward the house afterward, noticed something was wrong, and called 911 en route. He was arrested and pleaded guilty in 2015. He was initially sentenced within the juvenile system and set for release at 21. But before that release, prosecutors successfully argued he remained a danger and had not been rehabilitated. In November 2019, a judge sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Colt Lundy.
Did Colt Lundy's plea deal today. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder in exchange for dropping a murder and aiding in murder charge.
The plan, such as it was, involved killing his stepfather, taking his car, and driving to Arizona. Colt Lundy was 15 years old and living in Cromwell, Indiana, near Lake Wawasee. By his own later account, his stepfather, 49-year-old Philip Danner, turned physically and verbally abusive when he drank. Lundy had tried to run away multiple times. None of those attempts lasted, so he and two friends came up with something more permanent. On the 20th of April 2010, Lundy handed a handgun to his 1-2-year-old friend Paul Gingerich and let him climb through a bedroom window into the house, while a third boy stood watch outside. Lundy and Gingerich positioned themselves in the living room and waited. When Danner got up during a commercial break and walked to the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, both boys fired. Danner was shot 4 times, once in the eye, once in the wrist, and twice in the chest. The 3 boys packed food, clothes, guns, and ammunition into Danner's car and drove toward Arizona. Police caught them. Lundy was charged as an adult and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. He received a 3-0-year sentence, with the final 5 years suspended and served on probation. He was placed in the youth offender program at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility. Paul Gingerich, who was 12 and at the time the youngest person in Indiana to be sentenced as an adult, was released in 2017 after his sentence was modified. Lundy was released on home detention in 2022. Evan Miller. On the evening of the 15th of July 2003, in Lawrence County, Alabama, Evan Miller and his friend Colby Smith had been spending the night at the trailer of Cole Cannon, a neighbor, smoking marijuana and drinking. Later that night, after Cannon had passed out, the 2 boys went through his wallet and took $300 and his driver's license. They left, then they came back. Miller beat Cannon in the face with his fists, then picked up a baseball bat and kept going. Before delivering the final blow, he threw a sheet over Cannon's head and told him he had come to take his life. They then set Cannon's trailer on fire and walked away with Cannon still inside. Cannon died from a combination of smoke inhalation and blunt force trauma. Smith pleaded guilty in exchange for testifying against Miller and received a life sentence with parole eligibility after 10 years. Miller went to trial and was convicted of capital murder in the course of arson in 2006. He was 14 at the time of the crime. His case became the basis for the landmark 2012 U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Miller v. Alabama, which held that mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles are unconstitutional and require courts to consider a defendant's age and circumstances before imposing the harshest available sentence. Despite that ruling bearing his name, after multiple resentencing hearings, Miller was again sentenced to life without parole in April 2021 when an Alabama judge found that the nature of the crime and his institutional record justified the original sentence. Jordan Brown.
Ross Gadati was in the courtroom and has reaction now from both sides.
Jordan Brown's civil rights trial began on December 4th. It ended this afternoon with the jury coming back with a verdict saying
he was 11 years old, in 5th grade, and liked to go hunting with his father on weekends. On the morning of the 20th of February, 2009, Jordan Brown left the family's farmhouse in Wampum, Pennsylvania, with his future stepsister Janessa, who was 7. They caught the school bus together. At home, Kenzie Marie Houck was still in bed, 8.5 months pregnant with a baby boy. Her youngest daughter, 4-year-old Adeline, was still there with her. Hours later, a landscaper noticed Adeline standing in the doorway, clearly distressed. She relayed that her mother was dead. Houck had been shot once in the back of the head with a .20 gauge shotgun. The baby did not survive either. Inside the farmhouse, investigators found a child-sized .20 gauge shotgun that Jordan's father had bought him as a Christmas gift for hunting. It smelled like it had recently been fired. Jordan was arrested before sunrise the following morning. He was first held in an adult county jail, then transferred to a juvenile facility after attorneys argued the setting was inappropriate for an 11-year-old. His case moved between adult and juvenile court for years. His father drove 230 miles round trip each day to visit him. In 2012, a judge found him delinquent, the juvenile court equivalent of guilty, on first-degree murder charges. He was released from juvenile detention in 2016 when he turned 18, having spent 7 years in custody. In July 2018, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his conviction in a unanimous 5-0 decision, ruling that the evidence was equally consistent with his innocence as with his guilt. The court found the Commonwealth had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. He cannot be retried. He later attended college and studied computer science. Tashia Campbell. This one is not about the person on trial. Myron Pierce, 34, was working a day labor job in DeKalb County, Georgia on the 2nd of June 2019. He accompanied his employer to a Shell gas station off Interstate 20 near Glenwood Avenue, where he ran into a man named Tevin Merriweather, 25, who he said had scammed him out of money before. Pierce confronted Merriweather and started hitting him. Merriweather pulled out a gun. Investigators collected 22 shell casings from the parking lot. Pierce was shot multiple times, including 3 wounds to his upper chest and 2 to his lower right side. He was taken to a hospital and died. A few weeks later, Merriweather appeared in a DeKalb County courtroom for a hearing. Pierce's daughter, Tashia Campbell, was in the gallery. As a prosecutor began laying out the details of the shooting, Tashia stood up and screamed at Merriweather, demanding to know why he killed her father. Then she pushed through the relative sitting next to her and lunged directly at him. Deputies moved in and physically stopped her before she could reach Merriweather. She was removed from the courtroom. Afterward, a reporter spoke with her outside. She said her father had been understanding, someone she could actually talk to about anything. She said she was going to miss him. Merriweather was held without bond. His attorney maintained the shooting was done in self-defense. London Thomas. What happened at Muskegon Heights that morning in May 2019 took less than a minute. At approximately 6:30 a.m. on May 19, Vashon Flowers, 46, drove to the home he shared with his wife Jamie Thomas Flowers, 50, in Muskegon Heights, Michigan, kicked in the front door, and shot her 4 times in the torso at close range. Investigators said she was on the phone with police when it happened. Flowers fled on foot and turned himself in to Muskegon Heights police later that same evening. He was charged with open murder, meaning prosecutors could pursue first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or manslaughter, depending on how the evidence developed. He had prior felony convictions, including one for assault with a dangerous weapon. About 2 weeks later, on the 3rd of June 2019, Flowers appeared at Muskegon County District Court for a hearing. Jamie's son, London Thomas, was in the courtroom. At the start of the session, before the proceeding had fully gotten underway, Flowers was in the jury box, speaking with his public defender. Thomas leaped from his seat, cleared the courtroom barrier, and sprinted across the room directly toward Flowers. He came within inches of reaching him. Court officers tackled Thomas and brought him to the ground before he could make contact. He was placed under arrest. The following day, Muskegon County District Judge Raymond Kostrowa held him in civil contempt of court and barred him from attending any future proceedings in the case.